right, welcome everybody to the current edition of PM Mastery. And today I have back on the show Angela Thurman. Welcome back, Angela.
Hi, Walt. Great to be here.
So we're going to talk about a couple different things, but before we get into that, I wanted to find out, what have you been up to since we last met?
Oh, quite a bit, actually. So as you know, I am the secretary and membership director for the Texas chapter of Women in Manufacturing. And last week, I was at the International Summit, which was held in Atlanta this year. So I had the opportunity to network with and actually get to meet in person for the first time many of the other chapter leaders, members from within my own chapter, and some luminaries from the manufacturing industry. I had a chance to learn a lot about manufacturing, and particularly how I can apply my project management skills to assist the manufacturing industry to move forward and improve. And I just had a great time, spent time with good friends, and really enjoyed the summit. So that's what's been happening most recently.
Okay, and you have an actual, or they have an actual event coming up in November.
That's right. So in celebration of International Project Management Day, November 3rd, our Texas chapter is hosting a virtual subject matter expert panel, and you and I will both be panelists. So this is going to be an Ask Me Anything format, and anyone can attend. The event is posted on the Women in Manufacturing website, and I would just invite anyone who's interested in learning more to register for the event, show their support for project management and women in manufacturing, and come prepared to ask us your hardest questions and learn from you, from me, and other project management professionals in the industry.
Cool. Now, this episode will come out just a couple days before that. At least that is the plan. So I may try to maybe do a post online and kind of help you promote that so we can get some more people interested in attending.
That'd be great.
So I already did send the invite to my wife, who is a professional engineer in the utility industry, and super smart cookie. So we'll see if she shows up.
I can see how you two would get along.
Yeah, we're opposites. So today, one of the things that we had chatted about was talking about a project management methodology, which is called Agile. But one of the spins on that is, and you can explain it better, is which Agile are you talking about?
So Agile is kind of a buzzword in project management right now. And everyone talks about how they want to employ Agile project management. And I always want to stop them and say, okay, wait a minute. Are you talking about Agile with a capital A, meaning the frameworks under the Agile Manifesto, or are you talking about Agile with a lowercase a, meaning you just want your project management to be quick, nimble, speedy, efficient? And usually it's the latter, because I think that most people don't really understand what Agile project management is. They've never heard of the Agile Manifesto.
And it's interesting because I've worked in the design and construction and a few years and well, a lot of years in IT, but never doing real software development. But my recollection of Agile, because of the manifesto, was that it's a way to deploy software. So when I would get questions on projects in the construction world, and I remember leadership would come in, they'd fly them in and they'd talk about this big project rolling out. And I would outlay how we were going to do the project. And they would say, so you're not doing this Agile? And I'm like, well, no, we're not. And I'm not sure. I didn't want to like make them look silly or anything. So I was like, no, we're not actually. This will be waterfall. And so, okay, I didn't think so. And it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're just asking. So maybe you can kind of go into a little more of what really the big capital A Agile is.
Okay, so Agile with capital A means that you'll be working with your team in an iterative method. So whereas with waterfall, you would be laying out the requirements at the beginning of the process and developing a plan to deliver the deliverables that meet those requirements based on the budget that you have. You would create a schedule and you would proceed from start to finish to do units of work, tasks, and ultimately complete the work required to meet the outcomes necessary to meet those requirements.
And this is in a very linear fashion.
In a very linear fashion, yes. And we usually think about there being gates along the way where you go through the phases of the process. So you would move through initiation and planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and then finally closing the project. Waterfall is not like that at all. You start at the beginning and you may not have all the requirements. You start.
Well, you mean Agile.
I'm sorry, Agile. You're right. Thank you for that correction. Agile, you start when you have some requirements and you develop in an iterative fashion. So you do some work in what's called a sprint of time, generally 2, possibly 3 weeks. And at the end of every sprint, the manifesto says you will deliver working software. So it may not be the ultimate outcome, but it is in some form or fashion working software.
Usable,
yes.
So it's like where when you go to the next sprint, you might say, okay, this is the core basics, this is the login, and this is the display of this program. And then they go, well, we'd like to be able to do this. Okay, well, that's another. And then when you get through that one, you go, is this good? Is that what you want? Well, yeah, but we'd also like to do this. But at any point in time, what you've done to that date is completely usable.
Yes.
You're just adding features onto it.
Yes. And you're creating these work elements based on what's called user stories. So you think about the role and what the task is that will be completed, and then the benefit. So you think of it in like 3 different steps. So as a project manager, I want to have a dashboard so that I can gauge performance. And that part is very important, because that's where you define what is the benefit to the organization for the work that's going to be completed in this part of the project, this portion of code that's being developed, or whatever task you're going to be doing. And so you define the role, you define the task, and then you define the benefit.
And in an agile environment, just like well, it's like a waterfall environment. If you're doing construction, there's a team, and
Yes.
the project manager typically leads that team. You
Mhm.
have your stakeholders and
Mhm.
you have your sponsor.
Mhm.
So in an agile world, you have something similar, but it's a different kind of a different shaped team, correct?
It's very different, yes. So in an agile environment, instead of having a project manager, the person who's doing the blocking and tackling for the team, helping to ensure that they have the resources they need, who's more or less monitoring the progress of the project, is called the Scrum Master. And that's because the team will meet every day in a stand-up meeting, and it literally is standing up because you want to keep it short and quick. And in that morning stand-up meeting, you report progress, what's been achieved in the last 24 hours, and what obstacles are you facing where you need help today. So it's very quick. And then the Scrum Master will be responsible for getting the resources and tackling those obstacles for the benefit of the rest of the team. And then generally, the rest of the team, the rest of the project team, will be developers, software developers.
Okay, but they're all part of the one team. And then you have
Mhm.
instead of a project sponsor, you have a project owner.
A project owner or product owner even.
Product owner, okay.
Mhm.
And that's who you're doing the work for.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Now, I'm not a big agile guy, but I'm working on it. Scrum is a framework for agile,
Yes.
but there are
Yes.
others.
There are.
So
There are.
what is one or two other ones?
So another popular, probably the most popular after Scrum, is Kanban. So we would think it's very visual, and the tasks are written on the Kanban or storyboard, and literally tracked from planning, doing to done, and moved from left to right as they're progressing through the phases of work to be done.
So a couple terms that I've heard that to me sound like very similar are parking lot and
Mhm.
backlog.
Yes.
Are they the same or are they different?
The backlog is the user stories that have yet to be tackled or to be assigned. The
Okay.
parking lot is more for those things that we may have started, but they're dependent on something, and for some reason we can't finish them yet.
Okay, so they go in the parking lot.
So they go in the parking lot. Mhm.
Okay. Cool. Well, now I feel like I understand it perfectly. So user stories, backlogs, parking lots,
Storyboards.
storyboards, Kanban. I think people really like Kanban because of the visual
Yes.
And in a lot of project management software, some of the more popular ones like Trello and
Trello.
Asana, they
Mhm,
give you the ability to do textual or visual
mhm,
layouts. And I wouldn't say they're boards, but that's kind of how you can move stuff from a phase to another phase, or
mhm,
from design to execution to complete.
mhm, mhm.
So
And I like Trello's ability. It is very visual, and they try to make it fun. They also provide a lot of good templates, and the free version is really robust. And you can add video, you can add links. Um, it's pretty robust. I actually like Trello a
I
lot.
I used to use Trello a lot, and I had
Mhm,
so much data put in there. I had a side business, a computer consulting business, and I
mhm,
had my personal life, and I
mhm,
would organize stuff on different Trello boards and move them into
mhm,
ideas,
mhm,
goals, and then okay, now it's in process, and then it's complete, or it's deleted because it's gone.
mhm, mhm.
And then I switched over to Asana a couple years ago, and I have never really embraced that. Both of them are very popular,
Mhm.
but I'm leaning towards now going into there's another one that I've been involved in at work, and of course now I can't think of it.
Is it Notion?
No, it's actually more, to me, it's more robust because you can really customize the processes as you go through. It's like
Mhm,
creating small databases, then you
mhm.
can link them together. And why is it that I can't think what it's called? It'll come up, it'll come to me while we're talking, I'm sure.
So anyone that knows me knows I love Airtable. And one of the reasons why I love Airtable so much is the fact that the same data can be displayed in so many different ways based on the viewer's preference. So I can have the same data displayed in a Kanban, in a Gantt chart, in a calendar, whatever I prefer or my team members prefer. And so the Kanban view in Airtable is really beautiful too.
Yes, Airtable is pretty sweet.
Yes.
That was another one I looked at for a while and didn't. The problem is when you've been using something for so long, it's hard to convert everything over to a new tool.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then of course at work we use completely different tools. So
That's
now it's
right.
too many tools to learn.
There's a lot of tools, a lot of tools.
So with Agile, speaking of tools, is
Mhm.
there certain tools that are used in Agile project
Well,
management?
as it's probably difficult to believe, but I still like Microsoft Project for even an agile project management. Um, its its capabilities are really really impressive, and you can do um, uh, sprints. You can allocate points. You can you can you can do everything in Microsoft Project that you would expect to see in a waterfall project. All of that robust resource allocation. Um, it's really really good, and Bonnie Biafor has an excellent course on LinkedIn Learning precisely for how to do agile project management using Microsoft Project.
Okay. I'll
Mhm,
have to get that and add it into the show notes with a link.
mhm.
All right. I think what I was thinking of earlier was smart sheets.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
So, all right. So that's one tool.
Mhm.
There's different frameworks,
Yep, mhm.
and but it is most commonly used in software development.
It is. The iterative method, though, can be applied to other types of projects where you would normally or historically see waterfall applied. But it would be primarily, or I believe, it would primarily be used in the development stage of the project, particularly, around the requirements development. And not, I don't feel it would be used so much around the execution.
Yeah, the one thing or the one parallel that I would say is possibly in design, because design can be very iterative. You can go a
Mhm.
certain direction and go, no, you know what?
Mhm.
Let's stop there. That's good enough. Let's build this.
Yes.
And then they might come back and say, well, I love that outdoor space that you did with the canopy, but I'd really like to turn it into a game area or a picnic area.
Mhm.
So you iteratively you add more to it. So
Mhm.
that would be something similar. But with construction, it's typically the plans are already done. Now you just go out and execute. The
Mhm.
closest thing they do is they might have daily stand-ups for just what's happening that day, the tasks
Mhm.
for the day. And then if
Mhm.
something changes that might affect the timeline, or why can't I think of the term, the critical path,
The critical path.
then you may have to adjust.
Mhm.
But typically you follow a very linear process.
Agile has no critical path.
Yep,
And
big difference.
for me, that's why it's so difficult to understand what the schedule is going to be for an agile project, because you can estimate, but you can never really know how long a project's going to take.
So in an agile environment, say a software development, and it
Mhm.
depends. I assume if you're an outside developer, outside development team that
Mhm.
is doing this, or if you're an in-house, like you
Mhm.
work for a large corporation, when it comes to budgeting and cost, is that part of the process? Like when you go through a sprint, you say, well, this sprint's going to cost $5,000 because of the people involved. And we go to
Mhm.
the next one, it's going to increase the cost of the software another $5,000. Or how does that work?
That's a really good question, and it it is the budget. The budget, just in my experience, just seems to increase, because as you go through each sprint, um, if more time is required, you either slide tasks into the next sprint so that ultimately more time for the entire project is required, or um, things get deleted, they get dropped. It's like, well, we had planned to do X, Y, and Z, but we only had time and money to do X and Z.
So someone is monitoring, like if they say we're going to allocate $50,000 to build this product, this software product.
Mhm.
And so during the course of the project, they monitor how much man hours and materials that have been used for the project and say, okay, we're approaching that cap,
Mhm.
our max budget. So either we have to end it here, or you have to ask the, I don't know if is it the product owner that then,
Mhm.
okay, so they would pony up, okay, I'll give you another 10,000 or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, that's one thing I've never heard about. A building, doing construction, it's like it's known there's going to be added cost, and you can do it based on weekly schedules, general conditions, things like that.
Mhm.
But with the software is expensive,
It can be,
and
yeah.
some of the like games, and I
Mhm.
don't know if in the gaming world, I would assume they do the same thing. They work in an agile environment because they add features to the game,
Mhm.
and then if they, then they release the software, which a lot of gamers always say they release it too early and the players become the beta testers. But then they find out what people like and don't like, and then they go through another evolution of let's add some new features
Mhm. Mhm. And
or a
that's
new mode.
another thing with Agile is that a sprint is a fixed amount of time. So you can't work overtime in a sprint.
Hmm. Okay. So what else? What other tidbits can you share about Agile?
I think that we will continue to see requests to employ Agile, and it is going to continue to be an education for um, project sponsors to understand what that means and how we can incorporate elements of Agile into project management. I think that especially with the release of the PMBOK 7th edition and the move away from the traditional waterfall the life cycle definition and more into the performance domains, we're going to see more and more of that, because ultimately the goal under the new PMBOK guide is value. How is the project manager delivering value to the organization? So I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see how we begin to move beyond our traditional definition of the life cycle.
Yeah, that is that'll be interesting. I need to do a little more reading on that,
Mhm.
because I know I've read some different articles, and like I said, I work in a waterfall primarily environment, but there are people that have written books and papers on how Agile can be applied to construction.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, I would like to learn more about that. And I can see where that would work. Like I said, I think it's great in design. And I was telling this to PM this morning, that I kind of feel the way the projects that we work on right now are almost an Agile approach, because we receive a charter from our organization that we work for, and they originally created this charter 2 years ago, and they got it funded, and then they said, okay, now it sets, and then they go, okay, we're going to do that in 2022. So then in 2022 they go, okay, here's the charter, here's the budget that was developed 2 years ago, here's what you're doing. And it's for a project site that has not been touched in 10 years. So you go out and they go, we want to do X. And you get out there and you start surveying the site, making sure what kind of information you need to start your planning. And the people that are there now aren't the same people that were there 2 years ago. The leadership is not the same as it was 2 years ago. So we had a plan, but that plan ain't working now. So now we basically have to shift gears, and we go through this continually. And to me, that's kind of iterative, because what we end up delivering is not at all what the charter says, because the requirements have changed from the original date to now.
Yeah. And as you say, let's say you got your charter 2 years ago, and today, when you go to procure materials, everything has changed. And not only availability, but price. And now you need, 50% more just to procure the materials.
That and the lead times. So you have, so they'll release the charter mid-year, and they go, this needs to be done this year. And 2 years ago, that'd have been possible. But now you say, okay, you want to replace these air conditioning units. These air conditioning units, yesterday I was talking on some computer room units that have 66-week lead times. That's over a year. And things that we used to see 12 to 16 weeks are now 48 to 60 weeks lead time.
Yeah.
And a lot of
It's-
it is chips and resources, just resources as well.
Yeah. It's those sorts of impacts are being felt across all industries. And so it doesn't matter if you're constructing, you're building a home, a factory, or you're building cars or mobile phones. That type of iteration around your scope of work, your schedule, your budget, it's going to impact the final deliverable. And I think that is where we are going to see the iterative methodology, which is in effect what Agile is all about. That's how we'll begin to see it being incorporated more and more into our projects.
Yeah, just there's so many things in the project management world that,
Yes.
Like supply chain is big. And I was just thinking how we're going to go through changes, like you said. I mean, you think about during COVID, one of the methodologies that became super popular across the board was just in time.
Yes.
So
yes.
They would manufacture only what was needed as it was needed. Well, when COVID happened and your resources were sent home that did all that, the stuff on the shelves, people say people were hoarding. There were some to that, but they bought all the stuff that was available and there was nothing else being made. So people didn't just hoard it, there was nothing left. And then when they might have had a skeletal crew producing, but they could not keep up with demand. And that was not just toilet paper. I mean, it was across the board. And so many people, like there was a presidential change and they go, oh, it's the new president, it's the cost. Well, have you guys not been around for the last 2 years, not seen what's happened? The materials aren't there. So they can't get them to the stores. And now they're getting them to the stores, but they're paying through the nose to get people back in and ramping up and doing overtime and all that. And the materials are going up in price. And there's other economic factors as well, but it has totally changed the supply chain and how we get things. The cost of stuff has gone through the roof. So all because of a little virus.
So if I could get back to Agile, the Agile perspective of doing a little bit of work in sprints. So small bits of work, and to have a deliverable software, but it could be some other requirement that you're meeting. The point of this is to not rework or repeat work. So you don't want to get to the point where you've worked a long time and then you're delivering something that does not meet the objectives of the project, the customer's requirements, the organization's desired outcomes. So that's another reason for working in an agile environment. So you're taking small steps forward, and you're having a point to stop and say, okay, did this work? Is it good? Okay, then let's take another step. Then let's take another small step.
You don't take it too far.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else you got?
Well, that's it pretty much. That's
okay. I think that was a pretty good explanation.
Yeah.
So of course, what we always do at the end of the show is we talk about a little, did you know? Do you have a did you know for today?
I do. So I'm an orchid enthusiast. I was formerly a member of the board of the Tulsa Orchid Society. And so did you know that there are wild orchids in every state of the US? So they're not really these delicate, difficult to grow type of flowers that everyone thinks you have to have in a hothouse. They actually grow naturally, wild, all across the United States.
Interesting. Now, would that be Alaska? And
Yes.
hmm,
Mhm.
all right, that's a good one. Okay, so appreciate you coming on.
My
We'll get some
pleasure.
information in the show notes about the upcoming manufacturing event, and put a little something in there about the orchids. People want to look into that a little more.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you coming back, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of PM Mastery.
Thank you.
No, I almost ended the meeting. I actually want to stop.